Alright, Chapter 15, Extra Ingredients. As you drop down towards the zero line, you may feel the need of some extra ingredient to insert into your life as part of the place of cigarette. There may be an oral substitute, something to put in your mouth, there may be some kind of physical activity to take kind of mind off the cigarettes. Despite the excess energy, it may be a hobby, it may be something, but think of the combination. Whatever the extra ingredient attracts you, latch onto it. But be sure that you approach it the right way. If you don't, you may damage your campaign and perhaps defeat it entirely. With the idea of substitute with the put in your mouth and the activity to keep it really occupied among the oldest in the whole encyclopedia how to stop smoking smokers who've taken cold turkey route especially strongly feel the emptiness of the hole in their lives. They suffer through long periods, perhaps whole days and weeks, when they don't quite know what to do with themselves. They seem entirely logical in the situation, like things seeking something that can be jammed into a hole, something that will fill in its emptiness. The logical upon this up to a point. The main danger the main danger in that is the reflective negative approach. The approach will be warned against in Chapter 7. The acting seeking substitute implies something good has been taken away and implied with a quitter rather than the moving forward to the brighter new life. This may seem like hair-splitting, but you believe this if it isn't. The business is wrestling, the tobacco complex, your attitude, enormously with important. After all, we are dealing with here your thoughts and feelings. I would assume the tobacco physically addictive only to a minuscule extent, if at all. We are all wrestling with any physical force we're up to against the psychological force exclusively. Thus, success or failure will be dictated solely what goes on in your mind. And seemingly minor problems such as self-defeating attitude towards substitutes could easily tip the balance against you. Millions of smokers have tried to break the habit. The vast majority have failed. They have failed because of the psychological factors alone. To abbreviate the dangers in searching for the substitutes, consider the story of the Mrs. Claire B., the 33, who came to smoke Watcher's after 3 unsuccessful attempts to succeed in her 14-year smoking career. In her last attempt, she had followed the advice given in a magazine article. I guess I enjoyed smoking without regrets for the fears until I was in the middle of my 20s, she told us. Then I began to get worried about it and disgusted with myself for continuing to smoke. I tried to break the habit on my own twice, once after I bout with pneumonia, and failed both times without really putting up much of a fight. Then one day I picked up those little healthy magazines, the kind with the fad diets and the advertisements, mail order medicine that are supposed to cure all your illnesses. One of the articles, magazine, How to Quit and Stop Smoking. It was written by somebody I never heard of, the woman, and she wasn't identified anyway, except by her name. No credentials were given, and nothing and anything to prove she knew any more about smoking than I did, and I was foolish to believe that what she said, but I wanted to believe it because I was looking for an easy way out of the tobacco trap. The easy way suggested the article apparently hinged mainly on the chewing gum and the taking long walks. Article writer urged her readers to take 3 long walks a day, breathing deeply, filling over the lungs within. She called it natural electricity. She didn't explain what this was, precisely what it was supposed to do. Furthermore, the readers were counseled to chew up to several packets of gum in a day, spitting it out with the old gum and starting a new stick at each time they felt they wished for a cigarette. Claire B. didn't particularly like gum, but she religiously followed the article's writer's advice and heard other smokers saying that chewing gum and taking walks good substitute, good ways to keep your mind occupied. So in a way seemed to make sense despite all the weird stuff at the bottom of the natural electricity. I did everything the article said. I chewed until my jaws ached, and in fact I developed a toothache at the second day. I walked until I thought I'd glow in the dark and with natural electricity. Trouble was the idea of quitting was strongly implanted in her mind. The gum was to substitute something good that she was giving up. The walks were a way of taking her mind and offer unhappiness. Every time I put a stick of gum into my mouth, I wish I were a cigarette instead. I kept thinking, this is awful. Will I have to do this all my life? So I hated gum, and walking really hated them. And after a week or so, I went back to smoking. Here's an attitude. Her attitude was wrong. Never think of anything as a substitute, but in the candy, hobby, or walking. Be it candy, hobby, or walking. Word substitute carry the connotation of inferiority, something less for the good than the original, than thinking itself that you are adding an extra ingredient to your life, something that you would not or could not have enjoyed if you continue smoking. Never count on any extra ingredient to wean you from smoking. It may happen in this way, but the weaning of the being accomplished mainly with a group of the pressure for the other force of them when we discuss. Extra ingredients you choose, whatever they will be, will contribute to the process of the various way, but the non-smoker should count on them carrying a major part of the burden. You can't succeed against tobacco simply by trying to switch your habitation to something else. We've deliberately placed this chapter late in the book because we wanted to get your freedom campaign well established before beginning to think too much about substitutes. You should be somewhere in the range between 20 cigarettes a day and the zero line before starting applying these principles to earnest the zero insight. Will begin to think of the ways to bring the new experiment into your life. Each smoker must choose his own. Here are some of the possibilities. Extra ingredients we've learned of smoking. Watcher's mentioned. Oral rewards, gum, candy, fruit, and the other foods. Your level of smoking decreases, your sense of taste will improve markedly. You suddenly find that all your favorite foods and drink taste better. You may not have enjoyed gum and candy and fruit while you were smoking heavily, partially because you couldn't taste them as well, partially because their taste and the tobaccos interfere with each other. The cigarette smoke after chewing on mint gum and eating sharp food, candy, sharp fruit doesn't taste good, and many smokers for that reason. Until now, you've avoided gum and candy and fruit. You may remember having enjoyed them as a youngster, but you haven't enjoyed them since. Alright, try them now. You may find experiment delightful. Suddenly, you've won maybe enjoyable taste. Don't make the mistake with a clear be made. Don't latch yourself on a substance like gum or doggedly chewed, whether they enjoy it or not, hoping to make it into a cigarette substitute. The real reward your choice you choose. If you choose anything, should be something distinctly enjoyable. It should be rewarded on an exercise of self-denial. Experiment a little and try foods that you enjoy before you smoked, or try the kind of candy you never tasted before. Word of weight gain. You probably heard that a smoker often gains some weight after coming free. In a later chapter, we'll discover the phenomenon more fully. But for the moment, we can tell you that you probably needn't worry about it too much. If you worried about it, if you can't stick with the non-fattening oral rewards, few fruits are fattening. Even a dozen hard candies have a little more than a caloric content and single slice of buttered toast. Sports, as taste returns, so a good ideal of the physical energy, blood circulation will improve, the rapidly breathing will become more efficient. Your lung was absorbed among more oxygen with each of the breath if there's coating of the tobacco. Despite pauses disappear with the mucus generated in the bronchial tubes, your body self the protective device against smoke subsides. Once again, you'll be able to enjoy sports as you did when you were younger. Don't take up any sport with a spirit, with a self-denial, any asceticism, grimly going through the motion whether you enjoy it or not. This defeats your purpose. Pick a sport or sports that you will highly enjoyable, or pick any form of exercise, walking, gardening. This will, in fact, with the effect of the keeping of your mind occupied. Clinches go as the glitches go, but don't think of that as the main purpose. Think of it instead of how much you enjoy the activity that you newly entered your life. Look ahead for the lifetime of similar pleasure and an enriched existence, and notice at the same time how your feeling of fitness is steadily increasing. Hobbies. Adults often complain that they don't have the time for hobbies anymore. Often, maybe always the actual fact is they lack of energy or not time. The certainty truth of the typical smoker at the end of the day, they are too tired to do more than drag his weary way homeward, flop down before the television set, and smoke himself in his restless sleep. As an approach to the zero line, we will find yourself a little more energetic after 5 o'clock and on weekends. You may interrupt the faintly jump the feeling as a withdrawal symptom, as you feel nervous and irritable because you are without cigarettes. This may be true to a certain extent, but a largely measure of the jumping feeling isn't actually a symptom. The abruptly increased energy, it feels odd because you've been so long without it. You've so usually been tired, smoked out. The feeling of the bounce of the energy comes as a surprise. You suddenly find yourself with a lot of energy and know where to channel it. You aren't used to feeling this good for years and haven't had a strong urge to do something interesting and creative and constructive. Alright, don't be overwhelmed by the feeling. Go back to some of the hobbies and interests absorbed when you were younger. For years you've thought of the pursuing these interests have been bored you. Now that you might find you're surprised that you've hugely interested and absorbed once again. One client of ours had a coin collector when he was a younger man. He had looked at his collection for hadn't looked at his collection for about 15 years. His mountings and packets of the coins and boxes have been stowed away in an old trunk in his attic. He approached the zero line. He began to think about his coins again. One night, he went up to the attic and unpacked the trunk. I was up all until 4 the next morning, looking through all the old stuff, and he said, I was absolutely fascinating that it isn't the best part. But the next day I went out and bought a new coin catalog, and that night I came home and looked up at all the old coins, and I see that their values were, and it turned out that most of them had appreciated a lot value over the 15 years they had laid in a trunk. Some had double and triple the better. Simple lying in the trunk doing nothing, and my coin collection have earned my money. Money. It was a revelation. Now I'm an active collector again, and I began trading for profit in a small way. Beating the cigarette habit was one of the most profitable moves I ever made in my life. That's the way it's gotta be. That's the way to go about it. Don't grimly take up the coin collection because of some of the dim conviction that you need to keep occupied. This won't help you. Whatever you do, your newfound energy, it must be something that from which you've derived the positive enjoyment, something you do for its own sake. Other extra ingredients or reward sports hobbies are some of the 3 most common kinds of the extra ingredients the smoker introduces in their lives, but they are by any means but the only ones. The choice of the possibilities are large and the years to consider. It's foolish, although done often, to urge somebody to take up a hobby or get yourself a sport. If no sport or hobby happens to interest you, you will only harm your campaign by trying to feign or force interest in where no naturally exists. You may choose the extra ingredients of your own, but no pressure on you from anybody else. For example, some watchers have told us that they brought new ingredients into their lives by buying something they've coveted for a long while. One woman bought a new high-fidelity set that she put it in with the loss of myself in the music. Another bought a dog. A man traded his old car for a new one. I was still smoking about 10 cigarettes a day at a time, he told us, but I never smoked in that new car, and I didn't want to mess it up and make it smell like tobacco. So others have found other routes. From retired men joined with the local library, living with a few blocks from it for years without setting a foot inside it. I'd always told myself that I should read more and explain. I never seemed to have the time, or at least this way I was the excuse I gave myself. The truth was, I always fell asleep over books when I was smoking. I was tired of most of the time and stay awake, but I am not read often enjoyed it thoroughly, almost like getting a second education. He paused and added shyly, as a matter of fact, I've started something else I've long dreamed of doing. I've started writing a novel dealing with some of my experiences in business. It was one of the things you tell yourself that you do, but never actually do it. But I never had the get up and go before. We've learned since that he has finished his novel, it was accepted by a publisher, and he is now working on a sequel. We asked him for later whether he would rather be living in the present life than smoking, he laughed, and the question was ridiculous. Chapter 16: The Withdrawal Symptoms.